Paul Auwaerter with Medscape Infectious Diseases. As an ID clinician, I often have to rely on laboratory tests to help me in making diagnoses and also in management of my patients. Recently, the Food and Drug Administration has issued a proposal for a certain kind of tests, so-called LDTs, or laboratory developed tests. And these are ones that I rely on, and I thought it'd be worth discussing and also getting some sense for what people might think about this FDA proposal. First, just by way of definition, what's an LDT test? An LDT test is one that's offered by a single laboratory, so it can't be offered in multiple labs. It can't be commercialized. And it is an analytical test that can measure any kind of biological sample, for example, for proteins or DNA, for example. And the lab has to be CLIA approved, which means it meets a certain standard of analytical capabilities. However, there really isn't any clinical validation required, or at least that is being imposed upon these tests by the Food and Drug Administration. And this ruling came about gradually, but in 1988 was considered such because these LDT tests at the time were considered fairly low-risk tests, meaning that if you were analyzing a sample, it really didn't likely have an impact on patient diagnosis or care. Now, there are many high-quality academic labs that are offering these LDTs, but there's also many commercial outfits in a single laboratory where samples could be mailed to have them analyzed and run. So let me give you some examples. Here at Johns Hopkins, we have a number of LDT tests. I rely on them, for example, adenovirus to help diagnose patients, especially immunosuppressed, that might have a pneumonia or liver issues, along with fever. We also use our herpes simplex virus LDT, which our clinical lab has validated and found that it offers better sensitivity than the commercial multiplex kits available. So we rely on that. And our lab is very careful about proceeding with releasing a so-called LDT until they feel very comfortable that it fits appropriately with sufficient analytical sensitivity specificity within a clinical sample. Now, on the other hand, in my outpatient world especially, I'll see patients who are concerned they might have Lyme disease, or they've seen physicians that will say they have multiple tick-borne infections or other infections. I've had patients say they have 5 or 6 of them, for example, Lyme disease, Babesia, Bartonella, Mycoplasma, EBV. And they'll come in with test results from laboratories that are LDTs, and they'll often have a proviso on them that say they're for research only or only for educational purposes, yet they'll purport that they are finding analytes, whether they're antibodies or PCR or proteins that are indicative that they are suffering from an active infection, and they'll get treated for this and so on, and they're generally seeing me because they haven't felt like they've had any improvement. So the FDA concern is, especially for some of these commercial tests and others, that they can give false results or they're making false claims, and that these tests can lead to significant harm. And one of the documents in the Federal Register that are indexed here in the reference section outlines a number of these that have led to problems, for example. And they cite issues with genetics, for example, where they might be told they have a metabolic disease or be told there was a high likelihood of cancer or Alzheimer's disease and so on. Autism. And there have been problems in infectious diseases with COVID that they cite, where once a test that was approved under EUA did not hold up to snuff due to comparison to a validated sample when they use this test compared to what the company provided. So the idea is that there should be greater oversight by the FDA, and they should be handled as a medical device, even if it's lab manufactured in one lab, and that it would need to have the same kind of regulatory approach that it would for any of the commercialized tests, and that this would be accomplished over 4 years on a phase-out basis. So it wouldn't be immediate. They may have some carve-out exceptions, for example, in emergencies, COVID might be an example, or Mpox, and so on. So what it means, I think, to clinicians are severalfold. First, when I've talked to our clinical microbiology department, they are being prepared because it looks like if this rule moves ahead, that they will have to submit for pre-market approval for their tests. This may require a lot of paperwork and cost. And of course, the FDA may be inundated with lots of these tests. But as long as they might have so-called pre-market approval, it could still be offered as long as it remained within one lab. And as Karen Carroll in our laboratory pointed out, the range of this is fairly broad. She pointed out the example that a gram stain, for example, which has been around forever, technically is probably a laboratory-developed test in the sense that it's never been commercialized or passed FDA muster in the traditional way. Now, on the other hand, it may force other companies to seek this approval, but then would be subject to clinical validation, which they may not have accomplished, or if they do, and the data they submit could be analyzed and perhaps challenged if it looks like it wasn't clinically valid. There's also probable legal challenges. I'm a clinician. I'm not a laboratorian. I'm not a regulatory specialist. But there's a sense that probably there's an argument that the FDA lacks some oversight here, and this might delay this 4-year rule. The Infectious Disease Society has historically supported high-quality LDTs, and that they're concerned that pre-certification certainly might preclude the ability for labs to offer critically needed tests for rare diseases that don't have commercial assays, for example, and that this might impede care. I think that's certainly a valid concern, and the proposal is open to comment, but it does seem as if this has been moving along. FDA has been working on this for a long time, and like many things, there'll be some benefits to this, but also potentially some difficulties as well. So it sounds like compliance and the bar for offering tests will be raised. Many labs are already meeting that. They'll just have to go through regulatory work to get that approved. But there'll also, I think, be some benefits, especially in areas where patients and physicians are using tests that may be giving false information or setting them down a particular diagnosis, which is not valid and not doing them any favors. So it'll be interesting to see how this rolls out over the next few months or so. And if this comes to be, we'll no doubt change our practices, hopefully for the better, but no doubt there'll be some difficulties for some as well. So really thank you for listening, and invite comments. Thank you.